It was the hardest thing I've ever had to say to my husband. Right, there are 7 things people always get wrong. Number 1, it's about having more sex. You hurt me more than you will ever know. Just because you don't understand it's not fucking wrong. Number 2, someone always feels jealous. The idea of having sex with you for the next 40 years, I just can't do it. You are trying to find understanding in a world that no longer makes sense. Number 3, it's an excuse to have an orgy. She's my dream angel. Sorry, I was just sick down myself. Number 4, it's selfish. Your Honour, my client has been proven to be insane. That we were ever apart will one day seem like a dream, Monty. I know this. It will be you and me forever. And you may laugh. You might laugh at it, but we think it's the most beautiful thing to ever exist. Number 5, it's about fetish relationships. Everyone in love just needs to wake up and shake it off. And at what point did you decide to kill her? When this is over, my darling, we will be together forever. Number 6, it's a way to pretend you're not having an affair. Kiss and tell. Let's keep this between us. For me, it's like that scene in Dirty Dancing, and it breaks my heart every time. Love and death, fine. Throw sex in there, why don't you? Number 7, it hurts. It hurts. It hurts. Welcome to Extraordinary Stories Podcast, the Love Series. Hey, how are you? Are you well? Are you good? I am. Well, I say I'm good. Really, well, I am, but there is something I need to address. Something I need to clear up before I get on with this episode. So the last episode, Lonely in Love. I told a particular story about a polyamorous relationship, and that was one story. I just told that one. And it was, one story where I was looking at a husband and a wife, where the wife wanted to have this relationship, the husband didn't, and ultimately it ended in divorce. Now here's the thing. There has been a backlash. Oh my, there has been a backlash. I have been swamped with people telling me that I don't understand polyamorous relationships and that I was incredibly insensitive to those who live in poly relationships. It went as far as me being called a bigot and a homophobe publicly. Interesting. I'm guessing the people who chose to call me that have never heard any episode that I've ever done. I won't fucking entertain that. I just won't. I'm not a bigot. And I'm not a homophobe. Get in my face with that. Now, was I talking about the entire ideology and the entire practice of polygamy? No, I wasn't. I was telling one story. I could have told a million stories about how wonderful I think it is. And if I was unclear, I apologise. Let me be clear. I think if that's what you choose, that is a wonderful way to live. You know this about me. I will laugh at ridiculous things that people do. And yes, I will sometimes question decisions that are made. But when it comes to how you live your life and the choices that you make, someone said to me, you preach openness, but you can't show it through that story. I just, it's such a boot in the balls. It really is. If you wanted to marry your cat, I would support that 1,000,000%. So, ultimately, what I've done is I've taken the episode down. Now, I've taken it down only for now. The episode will go back up in the future with a clearer explanation of my general feelings about polyamorous relationships, which are positive, and maybe I just didn't communicate that properly in the episode. And maybe I could have told a story in which I explained that, this is how it works wonderfully. Because that is how I feel. I just maybe didn't communicate that. Now, I know that lots of other podcasters would say a big fuck you to people who didn't like an episode or a story, but that's not me. I've always maintained this one thing, which is if you don't like it, don't listen. But that's my way of looking at the podcast in terms of people who come to me all the time, and I get this all the bloody time, is I get people who come and they say, oh, you swear too much. Or you wander off the point too much. Or I don't like the singing. Which, by the way, is ludicrous. Come on. And so to those people, I will say, well, don't like it. Don't listen. That's absolutely fine. But this is different. I've clearly upset people with that episode. And that's not me. If I thought that every single time I told a story I was going to upset people, then, well, I'd need to stop podcasting. Because what would be the point? I've always said this, and I always will. Extraordinary Stories podcast it's about the community who listen. It's not about me. It's not about some fucking ego trip from me. It's not me looking for podcast success and going, do you know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to tell stories that are a bit controversial and just fuck what everyone else thinks. I mean, I may well be the Madonna of the podcast world, but unlike her, I don't have a team of publicists to defend things. It's just little old me sitting with Alfie on my lap, telling stories. I do really carefully consider every story that I tell. I've told stories about babies being stolen out of cribs. I've told stories about brothers and sisters who've married each other. There's no way for me to know that when I tell those stories, it's not going to affect someone who listens. So it becomes impossible. But I've clearly, with the polyamorous relationship story, upset a lot of people. So therefore, it's coming down. And I will rectify that because I've upset the community and that's not my podcast. So yeah, So that's just what I wanted to say to address that. Alright, it's the last episode in the Love series. And it's a crime kind of love. It's actually a subject that I've circled around before in other stories, but now we're going to drill right down into a very particular, individual kind of love. Are you ready? Okay, let's go. So we begin in Kansas, 1933, with a family called the McElroys. Now, I'm assuming you do say it McElroy. Now, that's because the name McElroy there's quite a lot of Scottish families called McElroy, but it's definitely McElroy. This is McElroy, so I'm assuming it's just the same way, so I'm just going to go with that. Henry McElroy is a father to 2 children, and he is also a city boss. Now, when I came across the term city boss, I was like, let's do some digging. What's that all about? So in my head, I was like, well, it must mean that he like owns the football team or something. That's a really probably weird explanation of a way to think about it. But I was like, it must mean that he owns like the sports team. Or no, I was completely wrong. City boss essentially is what we would now call governor or mayor or, that kind of role, that kind of figure. We have that slightly less in the UK than I think you have in America and Australia. Not quite sure about other European countries, but I know that in obviously in America, in lots of different states, you'll have your mayor figure. Your mayor, what's his name? Julian? Gillian? Julian DeGardo? What's the guy that used to run New York? Him, yeah. Like that kind of figure, right? So that's who we're talking about. So Henry McElroy. It's Kansas, 1933, and he is city boss. So just imagine him. He's like sitting there in his big like suit with his big like fat cigar, being like, "Oh, it's 1933 in Kansas, and I run the city." That's what he sounded like. That's an absolute replica of what he sounded like. So he lives in like a big, lovely, posh city boss house, and he lives there with his son Freddie and his daughter Mary. Henry was a widow. The children's mum had died years before, and now he was raising his 2 children alone. Henry was revered for his running of the city. He was a strong leader. He was a man who was going to clean up crime. He was going to make Kansas a great place to live. So both his son and his daughter, they felt this. They respected, they loved their dad. They really looked up to him. Let's talk about Mary, Henry's daughter. When she was growing up, she idolised her dad. She loved him. She would often go to his workplace. She was just fascinated by the job he did and his life. Both of Henry's children, they stayed with him into their early adult life. They weren't that sort of like, okay, I'm 18, I'm out the door, see you later, Mom? No, Mum's dead. Oh. No, they actually wanted to live with their dad in their early 20s. Henry, he had gone from this role of city manager to now being called judge. And that was because he was now sitting in court as a judge. That was also just his nickname. People knew him as the Judge. So as a family, they were really close. And Henry, he encouraged his 2 kids to get into politics. Get into the life that he was leading and living. And he actually always felt that Mary had a real flair for politics. He always thought that if she actually wanted to go down the road of politics, she could do quite well. I mean, pretty good for 1933, you know? Pretty good that he's like, here's my daughter. I actually think she could be pretty brilliant. So, they have a close relationship, the two kids and their dad. For Mary, that relationship was, yes, she loved and respected her dad, but also she felt that because there was no women in the house, because her mum was dead, she felt a need to stay with her dad and care for him. Mary gets described, and I hate this. Oh, I hate it. Mary gets described as plain looking and homely. Ugh, what a rubbish way to describe anyone. Plain looking and homely. Oh, fuck off. Ugh. So obviously, in Henry's role, he was trying to just take charge of the city and get on top of crime that was happening in Kansas. And it meant that he would sometimes have to come up against some people and put them in prison. And he was quite strict about how he ran the city. And it made him a bit unpopular with some of the criminals. Now, like any politician, he was sometimes questioned on his unorthodox relationships with the criminal underworld. I mean, come on, imagine it. A politician, a powerful figure, having secret meetings with people that they shouldn't. I can't even see how that's possible. There was a little bit of questioning around Henry's taxes and how money was being spent. I mean, it's good to know, right? It's good to know that we're in 2019, this is 1933, and fuck all has changed. We're still having the same conversations. Who are politicians talking to? What the fuck's happening with taxes? Anyway, so Henry. Henry was considered to be a wealthy man. Of course he was. And in the eyes of the city, he was this powerful, big figure. People knew his two children really well. They were both now adults, but people knew them because, Mary would often accompany her dad on trips and to meetings, and she wanted to learn as much as possible about the mayoring, judging, city running business, or whatever you call it. So let's go to May 27th, 1933. In their big, posh, mayor, governor, city boss house, Henry has gone to work for the day. Mary's brother, he has also gone to work, and Mary is at home. Mary is in the bath, to be precise. It's 10 a.m. in the morning. And this was kind of Mary's routine, to take a long, leisurely bath in the morning before she went about her business for the day. And if you're currently listening in the bath, shout out to you. Hello. I know a lot of people listen to Extraordinary Stories podcast in the bath or the shower. Great. Hello. So the only people at home on that day, May 27th, were Mary in the bath and the cook, Hedda, who was downstairs in the kitchen. There is a knock on the door, on the front door of the house, and two delivery men are standing there when Hedda, the cook, opens the door, and they say to her, "We have a delivery, and it's to be placed upstairs in the house. Could you possibly leave the door open while we go to the van and get the thing that we're delivering?" However, these were not two delivery men. They were in fact criminals from Kansas City by the names of Walter McGee and Clarence Click. And they had come to the McElroy house for a very particular reason. Kidnap. Hedda, the cook, she left the door open and she returned to the kitchen. And when she was out of sight of the two men, they pulled out two small revolvers and they went upstairs into the McElroy house. Right, so here's Mary. Mary's in the bath, completely unaware that two men are about to burst in. And now, here's something that is so interesting, and I think we need to know this. The two armed kidnappers, well, they hadn't come for Mary. Instead, they were coming for Mary's brother, who they had mistakenly thought was at home, but he wasn't. So when they get upstairs, Mary's in the bath, they start searching the rooms, right? They're going room to room, they're looking for the brother, and they're like, we can't find him. But there's one room left that we haven't looked in, and it's the bathroom, and that must be where he is. So, they burst in, and to their shock, it's not Mary's brother, it's in fact Mary in the bath. So she screams in terror, but one of the men, he covers her mouth to muffle the screams. They explain to her they're here to kidnap her brother for a hefty ransom, but they will take her instead. Mary pleads with them not to take her, but they insist. Mary then agrees, right, okay, she says, fine, I will come with you, fine. And I love this so much. She says, I will come with you, but you need to give me 5 minutes to get dressed and brush my hair. I love the idea. Yes, you can kidnap me, but I really have to have fabulous hair. The thing is, I couldn't possibly be kidnapped unless I was looking fabulous. I don't think that's really what Mary sounded like. She wasn't English. She was from Kansas. I don't know what the Kansas accent is. We're not in Kansas anymore, Toto. No, what was that? That was me trying to be Dorothy from Wizard of Oz. Kansas. Does Kansas sound like this? Is this No, that's no Kansas. Shut up. Anyway, back to Mary. So the men, they allow this. And while she's dressing, they're having a panicked conversation about what the hell are they going to do. They didn't want the daughter in this family. They wanted the son. And why? Well, because, and this is good old-fashioned fucking sexism of the 1930s, they felt that actually having the son of Henry McElroy meant that they would get more ransom money. They would actually get a bigger ransom because they had the son, not the daughter. Do you know what I mean? They didn't want her. But here was the situation. This is what they had to work with. So, when Mary is ready, when she's finally finished dressing and she's brushed her hair and she's looking fierce, they march her out of the house without being seen by the cook, and they take her into their car. They drive Mary across Kansas City to their home, and they lead her into the basement of their home. Once inside the basement, they chain Mary's wrist to the wall with handcuffs, and she's now unable to move any sort of distance from the wall that she is chained to. Walter McGee and Clarence Click, what a name, were the two who took Mary, but who else was involved? Well, Walter's brother George was involved, and another Clarence Stevens. So Right, let's just get that straight before I start mixing up everyone's name. We have two brothers. We have George and Walter McGee, and we have two men called Clarence. Clarence 1 and Clarence 2 is how I will know them. Right, who were these four clowns? Well, they were petty criminals in Kansas City. They were like really low level sort of criminals, dealing drugs, a few robberies here and there. Thought they were a bit big time. Those kind of guys think they're a bit big time crime. Well, here they're kind of out their depth, really. So they needed money, and the four of them, they cooked up this crazy plan to kidnap Judge stroke city owner Henry McElroy's son and get a huge ransom for the safe return. And now they're in a situation where they have Mary chained to a wall. Right, now I guess you might be thinking, right, this is the love series. Where is the love? Where is the love? The love. Well, it's coming. Mary, being the lovely person that she is, she's obviously shaken and shocked by the situation, but she gets to know her kidnappers, all four of them. So in this tiny little basement, when she's chained to the wall, she starts to chat to them. And the four men, they actually quite like Mary. She's pleasant. She talks about her life. They talk about their lives. It's all very nice. It's odd to say that, right, about a kidnapping. But Mary was really well treated by these men. If she was hungry, they brought her food. If she was thirsty, they got her something to drink. Now, the men, lovely as Mary was, they still had to carry on with their plan. They still ultimately needed the ransom money. So now they're openly discussing this in front of Mary in this tiny basement. And they say that what they're planning to do is ask for $30,000 for her safe return. Mary jokes with the men and she says, 30,000, I'm worth more than that. I love Mary. What a diva. She's like, no, I won't be kidnapped until I'm fully dressed, and I would like you to ask her more money for my ransom, please. So the men, they actually listen to Mary, and they increase the ransom to $60,000 for her return. All the time, I just keep thinking of, do you know that, what's that Bette Midler film? From the 80s. Do you know what I mean? Where she gets kidnapped, and I'm sure Danny DeVito is her husband. Is it Outrageous Fortune? Is that what it's called? Something like this, where she's the kidnapped victim and he doesn't pay the ransom to get her back or something. I can't quite remember. But anyway, it's just lots of that film was running through my head. So you can imagine the press and the public, they are going wild within hours of Mary McElroy, daughter of Henry, who runs the city, being kidnapped. The press have gone insane about this. Now they're sure she's been kidnapped because the cook, Hedda, told the story of the two delivery men, and so police are sure this is now a kidnapping they're looking at. Henry, well, he is frantic. His precious, darling daughter is gone. Now, he doesn't know at this point, is she dead? Is she alive? Is she being sexually abused? He just doesn't know. But Henry was, given the job that he has, he's a shrewd man. And Henry starts to think pretty soon a demand, a ransom will be making its way to me, I'm pretty sure. So all the while, he's in his home, frantically wondering where Mary is. There is an absolute circus of media, being whipped up all around this house. So names begin to circulate in the media. The McGee brothers actually get mentioned by the press. But it's in one of those like ways where they can't quite pinpoint them as guilty. It's that sort of... It's horrible to say, but you know, like when there's been a kidnapping or there's been something absolutely terrible has happened in the news, sometimes when you watch the news, they start clutching at straws. They start actually just pulling out stories that they think might be related to this thing because they can't have any more information on it than what they've got, but they've got to fill the amount of time that they have. So they just start going, well, there was once a person who said this 5 years ago, and that's quite an interesting comment on this situation. And actually, it's just a way to sort of clutch at straws. Where they're really clutching here is Walter had apparently said once to someone in a pub that he found Mary McIlroy very attractive. He'd seen her in the newspaper, he'd seen a picture of her alongside her dad, and he fancied her. He thought she was hot. So now the press are like, oh, Walter McGee has to be involved because he once said something in a pub about fancying Mary. So what was happening inside that basement? Well, the note had been sent demanding $60,000 for the return of Mary, and now they waited. That was all they could do. During this time, Mary, she talked a lot with Walter. Walter, you know, being the man who had actually walked into that bathroom when she was in the bath holding a gun, Mary and Walter, they got on really well. Walter was beginning to feel a lot of shame for what he'd done to Mary, for the whole entire situation, and he went out and he bought Mary, as she was chained to the wall, some flowers. I mean, what's Mary going to do with these flowers? Like, ooh, pop them in a vase. Oh, lovely. Oh, you got me lilies. How did you know they were my favourite? Anyway, Walter isn't, you know, he isn't being a fucking hard ass here and like pointing a gun in her face all the time. In actual fact, he's just talking with Mary and he's trying to, you know, just treat her like a human being. So it's now been 24 hours since Mary's disappearance, and it is all that anyone can talk about. At home, Henry is waiting patiently, and the thing he's waiting patiently for arrives, and that is the ransom note. So he opens it, and it's asking for $60,000 for the safe return of his daughter. Henry's thoughts, well, $60,000 is a lot of money. Now, he loves his daughter a lot, but that's a lot of money. So Henry decides he's only going to pay 30. He's only going to pay 30,000. Ironically, it's what the kidnappers actually wanted in the first place. So now, it's been more than 30 hours since Mary has been taken. Walter, his brother George, Clarence 1, Clarence 2, they're waiting to figure out if the money will come through. So what they've done is they've asked for the money to be left in a designated, secluded spot in Kansas. And so they wait, and they go, and they check this area, and then yes, there is a deposit of money. Henry had one of his staff drop the money off. Now, they open it and they realise, it's only 30,000. We'd asked for 60, but this'll have to do. They decide this is going to have to do because they're not going to get any more. So now is the time for Mary to be released. And it's Walter who does this part of the job. This is horrible. He makes Mary strip entirely naked and he puts her into his car. Now, stripping her naked, it's not about sexual purpose, there's no sexual reason behind it, but he wants to be sure that Mary hasn't smuggled out any evidence which might indicate the location of where she's been. Now, that doesn't really make any sense to me. It doesn't really make any sense. Mary's been chained to a wall. So how was she ever going to, like, what the hell was she ever going to smuggle out of there that indicates where she'd been held, kidnapped? I don't know. Obviously for Walter, something in that made sense. Now, it's said that Walter was heartbroken to let Mary go. He cried as he drove her into a part of Kansas where he could drop her off and get away as fast as possible. So he drops her off, completely naked, by the side of the road. And Mary, she sees the first building that she can find with lights on, and it's a country club. And Mary walks in to that country club completely naked. Of course, by this point, everyone knows who Mary is, and if you didn't know who she was before, you will have seen her face in the papers. They must have been so shocked when she walked in. Can you imagine it? You're sitting there like you're having your whiskey in your country club, and then in walks Mary, completely stark bollock naked. Hello, I'm Mary. This is my body. So Mary is returned to her brother and her dad, and it's now that the impact of this is going to hit her hard. Now, not in the way that you would expect, not in the PTSD way of a breakdown because of what she'd endured, a breakdown because Mary is scared that these four men, especially Walter, will be charged and sent to prison for kidnapping her. Now, people around her, they're starting to struggle. They're like, Mary, aren't you angry with these men? And she's like, no, they treated me really well, especially Walter. And people are like, yeah, okay, right, fine. They didn't sexually abuse you. Yes, they fed you. Yes, whatever, but also they still kidnapped you. Mary just doesn't see it this way. She's like, but actually, they were quite nice guys. The four of them were actually lovely. People are seriously struggling to wrap their head around that idea. Rumours begin to fly around that Mary and Walter were perhaps romantically involved during her kidnap. Mary denies this. No one really believes her denial. So it's 2 weeks after the kidnapping, and Walter goes to use some of the ransom money. He goes to buy a new car, and when he pays with the cash, he is arrested. Clever old Henry, the judge, the city boss, he had marked the ransom money that he handed over for his daughter, so that if any of those kidnappers tried to use it, they would be caught spending it. And that's exactly what happened. So it's not long before all four men are sitting in court charged with kidnap and trying to what's that word? Extract money? Export money? Right, so they're charged with kidnap and extradite money? No, that's not the right word. What is the... give me a second, it'll come back to me. Extradite? No, that's not right. Mary, all the while, she's saying publicly to the newspapers, this is all just a big mistake. These are not bad men. I mean, her dad is livid. He is like, for fuck's sake, Mary, you're making a mockery of this situation. These men kidnapped you. And she's like, yeah, no. But they're being portrayed as awful humans. And they're not. I don't think that they are. When she's in court, she has to be questioned as part of the trial. And she's maintaining all the time, they didn't mistreat me. Walter brought me flowers, for God's sake. She's trying to make the point, they're not bad guys. There's a brilliant thing where the four guys are sitting in court and the judge says to her, can you point out the four men who kidnapped you? And she gets like deliberately hazy and she's like, oh, I'm not quite sure if it's him. Oh, was it him? Oh, I don't know. Oh, and she's making the whole situation really muddy. The term Stockholm Syndrome, it wasn't readily used in 1933, but that's essentially what people felt Mary was dealing with. That somehow she felt a love for her captors. When it came to sentencing, all four men were at first given life in prison for the kidnap. But Walter McGee, he had his sentence upped to the death penalty. Being seen as the ringleader, the criminal mastermind, Walter McGee was to be the first man hanged in America for kidnap. Mary was devastated by this. And she pleaded openly in court to have his sentence reduced to just life in prison. Now, either it was the connections that her dad had, or it was just the fact that the judge felt for Mary, whatever it was, his sentence was reduced from the death penalty to life in prison. So now people are just like going, oh, she's crazy. She is cray-cray. She is off the scale here. Why is she trying to get this guy reduced from the death penalty to this life in prison? Why? Now, it's her next actions which will only add to the belief that Mary was crazy. Firstly, she starts to visit all four of her kidnappers in prison. So she sees them all separately, one by one. She brings them gifts. She sits with them for hours, talks to them. She visits Walter most out of all of the four, and the prison guards will say they were like a husband and wife. I mean, right, it's a little bit insane when you think that Mary's kidnapping was actually only a total of 34 hours. But there was clearly a connection between Mary and Walter. Mary takes it a step further and she starts to visit the families of her kidnappers. The mothers, the brothers, the sisters. She becomes friends with them all. The press are ridiculing Mary at this point. She's being absolutely torn apart. She's being torn apart for sympathising with the men who kidnapped her and their families. Mary takes this all quite hard. She feels like she's being made to seem like a fool by the press. And she can only just have the same defence of going, I just think you're all misunderstanding these four guys. They're not the terrible people that you think they are. They were desperate. They wanted money. Yes, okay, they did a stupid thing by kidnapping me, but actually, they're not bad guys. And she keeps always coming back to, especially not Walter. I know you say he's the ringleader. In the situation, I don't think Walter is as bad as you all think he is. So during all of this, Mary's really coming under attack, and one day she just vanishes. Henry and Mary's brother, they wake up one day to discover she's no longer in the house. Now they know it's not another kidnapping because they see that she's packed up some clothing. Mary had run away to Illinois because she felt so attacked and was so heartbroken that Walter was never going to be out of prison. She sends a telegram to her dad that says, "I'm so sorry, Dad, but I'm frightened of what I feel. I just don't know what to do but run away." She says, "I feel like I'm a murderer. That's how people are treating me. No one understands that I love these men. And I have to run away from the situation because standing still is driving me crazy." Within 2 days, Mary is found by Henry and she's brought back to Kansas. So she continues to visit all 4 men. But the mounting pressure on Mary is too much. She is being so ridiculed for her feelings of love for these men. People are just putting it down to, "Oh, she's crazy. Oh, she's crazy now because of the kidnapping," but she knows she's not. She feels something. A year after her kidnapping, she suffers a massive nervous breakdown. Henry, her dad, although he might only have paid half to get his daughter back, he takes to defending Mary publicly. He says quite openly and honestly, "Right, while I don't understand Mary's feelings, I sympathise with her. And, if she wants to maintain a relationship with these men, then let her." Things begin to go really downhill for Henry McElroy. When the vote comes around for the city owner, stroke mayor, stroke keeper of the keys, whatever you call it, Henry loses and is no longer the big boss man. And of course people will say it's because of Mary and it's because of the kidnapping. Because publicly Henry's family looks like a massive slice of dysfunctional behaviour. Henry dies in 1939, 6 years after the kidnapping. Mary is devastated that he's gone, and she starts to spiral into a really desperate place. On the 20th of January 1940, 6 years after her kidnap, Mary goes to Kansas State Prison to see Walter. She brings him gifts. They chat. They laugh. And Mary leaves the prison. That will be the last time that Mary sees Walter. The following day, the family maid finds Mary's dead body in her bedroom. Mary had shot herself through the head with a pistol. Her suicide note reads the following: "My 4 kidnappers are probably the only 4 people on earth who don't consider me an utter fool. So please, when I am gone, give them a chance. Mary." Walter McGee was said to have gone into a dark depression in prison after being told of Mary's suicide. The Kansas City Star newspaper printed a picture of Mary and a picture of Walter, and they wrote the following: "Perhaps somewhere in another place and time and in another circumstance, Mary and Walter could have been love's young dream, and they could have spent their lives together. But this was not to be." And so ends the story. Okay, well, yeah. So I wanted to look at Stockholm Syndrome, but I think this story, I think it sort of transcends just Stockholm Syndrome. I mean, I think it's kind of part of what it was, but I also think that, yeah, maybe the newspaper's right. I think in the weirdest way, in the weirdest of circumstances, I think these two people actually maybe fell in love. And, you know, there's one of these, you're never going to know who you're going to fall in love with, or be that in any circumstance. You're just never going to know. And I wonder if maybe actually just Mary and Walter, through that bizarre circumstance of kidnap, actually went, oh my God, we love each other. We've actually found the person that I love. I don't know. I mean, you know, I like the idea that we can just fall in love with whoever, be they your postman, be they your bank manager. I don't really know why I'm picking all these jobs, but, you know, just the idea that actually you might just fall in love with the person that you would never assume that you would ever love. And I guess that's love. And if you fall in love with the person who chained you to a wall for 34 hours, then so fucking be it. Who am I to judge? You know, that's your thing? Fine. That's who you love. Okay, so that's it. That's the end of this episode. That's the end of the Love series. Except, of course, for the episode which will be reworked and resubmitted at a later resubmitted. Like what? Like an is. I mean, that sounds like it's an exam. I will resubmit the episode. It will be back up at another time, but I'm going to move on to a new series next. So, if you have enjoyed this series, then get in touch. Let me know. If you want to get in touch, where can you do it? Well, don't know if I've mentioned the Facebook group before much, but my God, it's amazing. It is growing so rapidly. What a place. There is undoubtedly something on there daily to make me laugh, make me think, make me go, oh, and just what the hell is this going on right now? It's brilliant. It's wonderful. It is fucking wonderful. There's also Twitter. There's Instagram. Or you can always email me. You can do all these things. So, until the next series starts, which will not be too far away, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Okay. Goodbye.
It didn't affect me really one way or the other. I would imagine from the look on his face.
Extradite. Exploit. Eliminate. Oh, what the fuck is this word? Right, get in touch. Get in touch if you know this word, because trying to extradite money from this people. No, right? I give up. I give fucking up.
Let's get it on. Let's do it. Let's get it over. Let's get it on. Let's do it. Let's get it over.